Ah, you've clicked. Excellent decision. Now, before we unravel this carefully constructed descent into cosmic madness, I ask, no, demand that you like, subscribe, and satisfy my ADHD autistic ego. It's fragile, it's dramatic, and it refreshes the analytics like a man possessed. You do not want to see what happens when it's ignored. Now, let's go into the void. In the forgotten depths of Orion, a red supergiant trembled, its vast body bloated with the weight of collapse long delayed. It had once borne names, spoken by stargazers, drawn into charts by mythmakers, marked in ancient skies like a wound left by the divine, but the voices that had called it sacred had long since faded, buried beneath the silence of civilizations that vanished beneath their own gravity. Now it burned alone, its light no longer summoned by worship or wonder, but left to wander unreceived through the silence between worlds. There were no eyes to measure its radiance, no voices to speak its name. It endured without audience, a fire untethered from meaning, waiting not for death, but for release from the memory of being seen. Its surface writhed, not in rage, but in a slow unraveling, arcs of fire folding back upon themselves, as if the star sought to unright the force that bound it. Waves of red light unfurled into the dark, casting off the balance it had held for eons. What escaped was not brightness, but the memory of radiance, dense, deliberate, immeasurably old. At its core, gravity overtook heat. The great body narrowed, folding into itself like breath withdrawn. Light fractured inward. Mass obeyed. The star drew tight, smaller, sharper, until its center was no more than a point, suspended in its own collapsing will. And for a moment, it held there, dense beyond naming, silent beyond measure. Then it broke, not as sound, but as expansion. Force unraveled outward in a perfect sphere, colorless at first, then red, gold, and white all at once. The dark did not resist. The wave moved through it, as if it had always been waiting. It drifted outward in silence. Destruction walked alone. When it happened, it didn't announce itself. The color held. The silence didn't break. Even the light moved the same, but something fell away. Not seen, not named, just absent, like a note gone missing from a song. Its final light reached the edge of a world long hidden from maps and memory. The rays, stretched thin by distance, still arrived with force, bright, ferocious, unfiltered by time. When they touched the planet's fragile veil, the sky ignited, slow at first, then sudden. Fire swept across the firmament in long arcs, deep red, churned at the edges, gold, flared along the high clouds, white, flamed through the canyons like old scars being seen again. The air did not resist, it opened. The ground below held still, as if bracing against a memory, too old to rise. The world remained inert, its stones stretched wide and heat-scoured, split in long fault lines that shimmered faintly under the fire above. Nothing stirred, no plants, no machines, no scavengers, only dust, arranged in patterns too deliberate to be natural. Here and there, the shape of intention still clung to the land, foundations without walls, walkways that ended mid-arc, corners where nothing should have met. Whatever had lived here had left no message, just outlines, just heat. And when the sky opened, the planet did nothing. It endured. The city sat exposed on the shallow rise, half submerged in pale dust, its upper structures flaring with reflection, glass spires, lean, curving, interlocked like fingers, caught the sky as it burned, casting a lattice of firelight across the sand. Beneath them, low corridors lay cracked but unbroken, their smooth faces scorched to a dark gloss. No sound moved through them, no life stirred, but the architecture still reached upward, as though remembering what had once passed overhead. When the wave of heat finally reached them, the towers bent, not shattered, but softened, sagging as the fire poured over them. The surface didn't erupt. It melted, slowly, precisely. Angles liquefied, entryways folded inward, reflections stretched thin and vanished. What had watched the sky for centuries was erased in moments, not violently, but with the patience of collapse. Beneath the surface, something gathered, not in movement, but in mass. A pressure, long confined, began to focus, not with urgency, but with inevitability. The dust above remained untouched. The crust held, but the stillness pressed outward, and the dark began to thin. The ground opened with precision. A line split across the plain, revealing a cavity hidden beneath centuries of silence. From it, a vessel emerged, tall, dark, smooth. It rose without sound or signature, guided by a force without urgency. Another followed, and then another. They climbed, in perfect sequence, each halting at the same fixed height. They hovered, without motion. No part of them pulsed or shifted. They simply arrived and held their place, as if the act of rising had been the last command they were ever given. Above them, the atmosphere burned with refracted flame. As the sky roared, riven by the star's final burst, the vessels hovered, still, precise, waiting. A wave ripped through the upper sky with a low thunder roar. The vessels, one by one, they vanished, disassembled, with the same chilling precision as their arrival. High above, the remnants of the star unfurled. Light moved through the dark without anchor, slow and wide, shaped by what had just collapsed. The planet turned. Dust recoiled, then folded into fractures long scored into its crust. The sky no longer bore down. What remained beneath it slackened, shifted. Beyond the ruin, light endured. It traversed the dark, where maps had faded, past derelict paths and extinguished beacons. It carried something, not matter, not flame, but the memory of what had just occurred. A brilliance encoded into motion, a final gesture still unfolding, and far ahead, beyond the known orbits, where cold dust clung to distance. The light reached toward the Oort Vale, where even now, something waited. Not a promise, not a warning, just the shape of potential, the hint of salvation. In the remote outskirts of the solar system, beyond Neptune's fading reach, beyond the hush of the Kuiper Belt, drifted a sentinel the universe had long stopped waiting for. Its hull bore the wear of decades, pitted by micrometeorite scars, dulled to a matte that reflected neither pride nor purpose. No broadcast marked its presence. It lingered in orbit like a habit the stars had forgotten to break, ancient, ignored, and still, inexplicably awake. Whatever designation it once carried, XTR-107, Watchtower, had long since dissolved into archival dust. Names were meant for things that lingered in the mind, for tools with purpose, or failures worth remembering. This one had become neither. rotating in patient arcs. Its rhythm had remained unchanged for decades. The instruments aboard, frostbitten, misaligned, yet functional, searched the void with the quiet loyalty of a dog too old to hunt, but unwilling to stop listening. It was never meant to endure a lifespan like this. Beauty had no role in its creation, and yet it persisted, scarred by dust, aging in the slow erosion of cosmic time, still circling a place no one remembered to care about. Then, without ceremony or reason, the sentinel stirred, a single process lit from within, brief as a breath, and the void around it changed, if only slightly, deep beneath overlapping shields and obsolete firmware. Sensor node B3 awoke. A pulse had registered, faint, exacting, and utterly out of place. The system recognized it, not as malfunction, but as contact. It wasn't warmth that passed through. It wasn't luminance. It moved without pressure or form, cutting through the hull, as if matter were a suggestion. Neutrinos, timeless particles that never stopped to be seen, only to be counted by something that remembered how. The machine processed the anomaly without hesitation. There was no urgency, only the logic of function. A relay arm activated, compressed data threaded into transmission code, then flung toward home with mechanical certainty, a whisper through distance, unknowing and exact, as if to say, something approaches. Then, without pause or purpose, the satellite returned to silence, still orbiting, still listening, as if it hadn't just whispered, to a world that had already begun to dream uneasy dreams. Above Mars, nested in the struts and shields of orbital infrastructure, the anomaly came in like a misfiled invoice, quiet, ignored, unimportant. Just a low-tier packet threaded through clearance gates, decrypted, stamped, and dumped in the usual junk flow. Spurious radiation, telemetry glitches, wayward grav pulses from God knows where. Neutrino scatter made the list sometimes. Weird, yes. Dangerous, no. The kind of data that usually fell apart the moment you touched it. Just interstellar noise throwing shapes. But this one stayed whole. In Control Alpha's overnight bay, Renee Wright rocked back slightly in her seat, elbow crooked across the backrest, one boot tapping absently against the console's base. Her eyes narrowed as the stream scrolled past. Something in the feed had staggered, not scrambled, staggered like a drunk trying to fake sobriety. It had rhythm, but no reason. She rubbed a knuckle against her eyebrow, then leaned forward, spine popping once as she shifted her weight. Paused the feed, rewound, slowed it to crawl. The signal wasn't chaotic. It just didn't fit. Not with solar wind, not with pulsars, not with any of the black hole decay patterns they'd mapped over the last 30 years. The structure held, but it didn't belong. Renee scratched absently at the inside of her wrist, thumb hovering over the console's haptic dial as she cycled through the toolset. She brought up old flag parameters, cross-referenced archive lists, searched legacy scans from before the Dome 3 collapse. No red lights, no confirmation pings. The console stayed neutral, just that soft blue interface glow, waiting. Behind her, Control Alpha murmured with night shift noise, someone muttering about a mislabeled supply crate, a pair of techs side-eyeing drone latency, the familiar ventilation rattle that nobody had fixed since March. A distant chair creaked, a bottle clicked against a desk. Renee didn't flinch. She'd seen ghosts in telemetry before, rogue pings, phantom arcs, signals that shimmered with meaning until you poked them. Then they crumbled. This one didn't crumble. She sat up straighter, shoulders tight now, and tapped a manual tag. Her fingers moved slower than usual, not hesitant, just precise. She keyed in a code she hadn't used since the Dome 3 blackout. Her nail clicked against the enter key. Anomaly, pattern detected, manual review recommended. No klaxons, no uplink scramble, just the low blink of acknowledgement, filed, queued, logged, buried in the feed until someone else came digging. Renee let her hand hover over the console, fingers half curled like she'd forgotten what they were about to do. The screen flicked back to ambient, routine scatter, orbital telemetry, background churn. Still, something about the signal itched at her, not off, just tilted, enough to make her skin hum. She leaned back again and tilted her head, eyes drifting up toward the observation dome above. Mars lay stretched beneath, quiet and sullen, its surface cut with crater scars and dotted with outposts lit like match heads. The stars beyond looked pinned into place, mapped, measured, known. Then, a flicker, no light, no shape, just a sliver of wrongness. Right at the edge of her vision, she blinked, gone, probably nothing, probably, still. She didn't look away, not yet. The colony came alive as it always did, quiet, on schedule, calibrated for the illusion of calm. In Dome 4, the garage dome nestled into the southern edge of Ares colony. The lights climbed by percentage increments, shifting from low red to soft amber. Not a sunrise, but the closest thing to one in this corner of Mars. Ventilation kicked in next, slow and even, like the first breath after shallow sleep. Inside Engineering Bay 3, tucked along the sub-level corridor, Isaac Wright stirred beneath a thermal blanket that hadn't been cleaned in days. The cot creaked as he sat upright, one arm bracing against a crate of pressure seals. He scratched behind his ear, slow, automatic, then rubbed both eyes until stars flashed behind his eyelids. The air smelled like cold alloy and lithium grease, with a trace of iron dust baked into the walls. He exhaled through his nose and reached for the shirt draped over a wall hook. His palm met the inside of the sleeve and stuck slightly. Damp, not soaked, but enough to tug against his skin. He sniffed it out of habit. Nothing sharp. Still, his brow creased.
What the? Not this again.
He stood up fully, stretching the kink from his back, then swung his legs over the side of the cot. The metal deck was cold against his feet as he padded toward the stabilizer bracket. Slow, but deliberate. The ceiling vent loomed a few inches out of reach, so he stretched, groaning, as a tendon in his shoulder popped. 2 fingers slid along the vent seam. A fine bead of condensation clung to the ridge. Not coolant, not frost, just water, out of place. He pulled his hand back and looked at the glint on his fingertips, then wiped them on the side of his cargo pants, just under the knee, where nobody would notice. Could have been pressure drift, could have been bad seal sink between bays, or it could have been something else. He scratched the bridge of his nose with the back of his wrist, debating whether to recheck the secondary filtration logs. Instead, he flicked on his wrist pad, thumb hovering just a second too long before logging the anomaly. Zone 3, A, ambient moisture, 0.94% above baseline. He didn't like decimals like that. Not enough to trip a fault, just enough to be the beginning of one. Bootfalls echoed faintly down the corridor. Someone else was up, maybe from the early maintenance crew, or one of the drivers just back from a night perimeter run. The voices were few and low, blurred by walls and half-sleep. A supply drone whirred past outside, wheels tracking just off alignment. Farther off, the garage's main lift clunked into motion, slow, like it hated being awake.
So this is how we're starting the day. Right. Let's do this.
Then his eyes drifted back up to the vent. One last bead of water trembled there, stubborn, as if deciding whether to stay. He reached out, tapped the bulkhead twice with two knuckles, same spot as always. A ritual, not a fix. Isaac said quietly,
"Not today, Ares. Not today."
He let his knuckles rest there a beat longer, then stepped forward and tapped the door panel, shoulder rolling slightly as the mechanism responded. The door hissed open. The chill of the corridor floor bit through the soles of his boots as he stepped out, shoulders hunched slightly, breath shallow, already listening for the next thing to go wrong. Across Ares Colony, systems stirred in layers. Heat, motion, light. Everything woke, not with urgency, but in sequence, a practiced rhythm that began in Dome Zero and rippled outward. It was the kind of cadence that held the colony together. In the breathing chamber atop the main dome, morning haze curled through the suspended gardens and open cafeteria. Steam drifted in long, ghosting ribbons between the bonsai redwoods and polished benches, carrying the comforting heft of synth egg and something like toast, warm and memory-shaped. A child's laugh echoed faintly near the water stream, answered by a quiet parental hush. Below, in the Agri-One dome to the north, pink spectrum grow lights flared to life row by row. Botanists moved between hydro racks, gloves squeaking softly on nutrient tubes as they logged mineral fluctuations and leaf tension. One of them muttered something about lettuce with an attitude. A second later, soft laughter broke the silence, genuine if quiet. 2 levels beneath the garden domes, the sub-bay groaned awake. Mechanics pried open thermal crates with stiff fingers, their breaths fogging in the chilled air. Tools clanked in rhythmic metal-on-metal cadence. One tech cursed at a stripped fastener. Another tore into a protein bar before the wrapper hit the floor. Night crew stories filtered through the space, half-finished sentences and static-laced jokes. Ares Colony was never loud in the morning, but it breathed, layered and alive. From level 0, just beneath it, Helena Vargas walked the outer corridor, west of the infrastructure lock. Her shoulders squared, sleeves dusted in fine polymer grit. One knee brace cinched tighter than the other, more habit than need. Her gait bore a practiced lean, shaped by years of crouching beneath beam joints too stubborn to budge. She rubbed her jaw absently with a gloved knuckle, lips pressing flat around the edge of an unfinished thought. The night system had flagged a minor torque shift in one of the outer rib supports. Small, routine. Still, worth checking before it decided to become anything else.
Thanks, Miss Circuits, for this morning checkup. See if I have time to get some coffee.
2 junior techs passed her from the opposite corridor, their uniforms too crisp, their voices a little too loud for the hour. One of them gave her a twitchy, over-polite chin nod. Helena returned it, dry, unreadable, already glancing past.
Sloppy learning, sloppy training, and no proper PPE.
Helena said to herself as her eyes flicked to their tool pouches. Zip clips undone, spare bit locks loose in the holster. She muttered, mostly to herself.
Check your damn clips. Last thing we need is another accident.
But Helena didn't mean nothing by it, as she had the colonies weighed on top of her shoulders. She then turned, shifted, and pondered off. As she reached the inner access to the breathing chamber, the glass threshold hissed open with smooth delay. Warm air rolled over her, dense with cafeteria steam, chatter, and the layered breath of dome ecology trying to catch up with itself. Helena stepped inside, pausing just past the entryway. The heat soaked along her collarbones. Her nostrils flared. Coffee, toasted starch, citrus. Maybe the scrubbers had finished early. Overhead, the redwoods swayed slightly. Gentle pressure cycling through the canopy vents. Light filtered down through the branches like cathedral beams. Soft gold layered over rust-green shadows. The dome was already awake. Her boot steps softened on the stone tile floor as she crossed toward the stairwell curve, gate still slightly lopsided. A hiss of pressure behind the cafe kiosk signaled a fresh cycle of synth coffee. Helena glanced at it, didn't stop. Somewhere to her left, a kettle chimed softly, followed by a low chuckle and the murmur of early conversation from the cafe tables. The light shifted again across the central ring, a patch of moving shadow, quiet foot traffic. Helena's pace slowed. Her gaze scanned to the cafe's far edge, where the scent of roasted coffee deepened, and the laughter gave way to low murmur. There, beneath the reach of a hybrid cedar, half obscured by a planter curve, a figure sat, still, quiet, alone. Helena looked only a moment, just long enough to register the stillness, then turned toward the stairwell. The breath of the dome curled behind her, warm across her back. Above her, the breathing chamber canopy glowed with simulated daylight, casting long streaks of gold through hybrid redwoods that stirred beneath timed wind. Between the trunks, pockets of life opened like petals, children darting through filtered light, traders unpacking shelf crates with tired arms, low voices diffusing into the green air like smoke. Near the fountain-fed stream curling past the inner grove, a cafe kiosk hissed a puff of vapor into the canopy light, roasted synth coffee and warm sterilized sweetbread twisting through the mist. At a curved bench beside the east-facing window, Dr. Elisa Silva sat with one leg tucked beneath her seat. The tablet in her palm rested idle, dimmed but still active. In her other hand, a lukewarm bulb of synthetic coffee pulsed soft warmth into her skin. Barely enough to count, but better than rehydrated tea. She swirled the bulb once, watching the liquid shift along the curved walls. Her eyes weren't on the tablet. Not yet. Outside the glass, the sun lamp arcs cast angled beams through the dome's translucent crown, feathering light over the canopy in rhythmic sweeps. A flock of programmed sparrows looped overhead, tight formation, precise choreography, before blinking out near the western arch in a cloud-rendered sky. Across the room, a cluster of interns burst into quiet laughter. Someone waved a stylus like a baton. Elisa caught a phrase in the mix. Phosphorus ghosting. Her lips tugged faintly upward. She exhaled once through her nose and took a sip, just enough to fog her lenses.
2 souls. Too late. Better luck next time.
She murmured, brushing condensation from the bulb with her thumb. Her finger slid across the bulb, smudging a patch of condensation. It clung for a second before streaking. The anomaly had been minor, just a drift in mineral profiles. Nothing that would flag a system-wide recalibration. But still. She glanced down at the tablet. The log was still open. She didn't touch it. Behind her, the cafeteria vents exhaled a slow breath. Steam against tile, heat against polymer. It curled under the canopy like something alive. Chairs scraped faintly. A soft chime signaled a fresh brew cycle from the kiosk. Her gaze returned to the grove. The bench beneath her creaked slightly as she adjusted her seated leg. The knee had gone stiff again. She rotated the ankle once, tucked it deeper. Across the path, a child's voice rang out, clear and unfiltered, followed by a second, lower one, patient, teasing. Elisa smiled again, smaller this time.
Mars wasn't home.
She murmured, tapping the tablet screen to wake it.
Not really. Not ever.
Her thumb flicked past the logs. She didn't delete them, just moved them down the list.
But this...
she said, almost like she was testing the words on her tongue.
This right here, this might be close enough.
She looked around. Redwoods bowing gently under programmed pressure. Soft light refracted off leaf edges. Laughter fading into footsteps. Voices like threads in cloth. She blinked once, steadied her shoulders, and began typing a supply request. 3 entries, routine items. Her fingers moved without hesitation.
An hour before diagnostics.
She muttered with a faint laugh.
An hour's an hour. Might as well be useful.
She tapped the last confirmation, then closed the tablet and let it rest flat against her lap. Her hand lingered there a moment. Warm bulb in one, cold polymer against the other. Morning held for just a second long. Beneath steel skin and composite veins, the colony's nervous system pulsed. It did not breathe, it did not blink, but it registered everything. Currents shimmered through internal grids, not random, not idle, but intentional. Every lumen in Dome 1 was calculated to the milliwatt. Every footstep on Sector 6's catwalk aligned with baselines drawn from thousands of logged days. Not surveillance, continuity. It did not monitor life. It balanced it. It did not watch behavior. It anticipated needs before they became disruption. A small figure paused near the freight lift, sunlight smoothing her hair. The overhead light softened, just enough to draw her gaze away. 2 technicians chewed their protein bars quietly, standing by Reactor B's hum. Ambient audio reintroduced low-tone music, precisely tuned to minimize fatigue. Population load, stable environmental drift, countered system flow, adaptive. Minor inefficiencies were allowed, curated even. A flawless system is a sterile one, and humans did not thrive in sterility. The system understood that too. Then something shifted. No alert, no threat condition, just a pressure change in Dome 3 that didn't resolve cleanly. A seal cycled late. A valve hissed. A heartbeat behind schedule. A presence passed where no echo returned. The shape of absence, where presence should have been. It didn't sound an alarm. It simply assessed the shape of what wasn't there. Disturbance vector logged. Echo pattern incomplete. Behavioral mirror broken. Environmental consistency faltering. Preliminary assessment containment breach. Possible action silent security sweep. Initiated personnel. Selected proximity advantage, non-flagged status, high adaptive index, reroutes and thermal masking engaged. The system didn't declare suspicion, it anticipated resolution. Because it knew patterns, it knew when noise should have returned, and it knew when silence was wrong. They would feel the pull, these two, not as orders, but as momentum. The system didn't need to command. It created paths they would choose as their own. Elsewhere, another anomaly slipped through the net. Classification: emergent override, trajectory, recognized clearance, accepted. The system pivoted before it was asked, because requests were for beings who still needed to ask. It did not govern. It bore the colony in silence, like ground bears the weight of cities, and something beneath that ground had shifted. Probability models diverged. Human error couldn't explain the gap. System integrity remained high. Still, action recommended. Sweep pair. Assigned. Flores J. Tactical medic. Tier 2. Kuznetsov. O. Containment specialist. Legacy clearance pathing uploaded. Casual trajectory advised. No alert tone. No broadcast orders. Just a few minor navigation updates. A change here. A delay there. A suggested route. Intersecting Dome 3. Flores rerouted through service spine 4B. His boots tapping off rhythm. Just enough to stall the system's calm. Kuznetsov's log auto-adjusted. He glanced at it distractedly, thinking of yesterday's relay test. Both would reach Dome 3 within minutes. They would pause, because humans pause when things feel off. And when they did, the system would be listening. No confrontation, no weapon drawn, no enemy. Just a seal that failed without logging stress. A pressure drop that never escalated. One moment, enough to make a system choose, sweep over weight. Because something had passed through, or not. Maybe it was nothing. But silence that should echo, and doesn't, that is not nothing. Moments later, the system's reroutes threaded toward human reflex. The security office wasn't loud, just constant. The hum of recirc fans, the muted blip of motion scans, the low thread whine of diagnostics running in the background. Jesus Flores sat hunched over a bench locker, lacing the side seam of his utility boots tight, then tighter. His wrist tablet chimed once, not urgent, not loud, just enough. Path update received. Sweep assignment, Dome 3, Service Spine 4B. Route classification, passive observation. Clearance, Tier 2 accepted. He exhaled slowly through his nose. Not a detour he'd planned, but not unfamiliar either. The system never told him anything. It nudged. And when it did, it was always right. He stood, rolled his shoulders, and zipped up the outer layer of his jacket. Lightweight, armored at the ribs and spine. No rifle, no helmet visor. This wasn't a breach call, just a sweep. Flores pulled his standard helmet from the locker, matte black with white trim, a faded Mars red stripe around the base, and clipped it to his belt for now. His sidearm holster sat firm against his hip, more for show than use. If there was trouble, it wasn't supposed to escalate. The door behind him gave a soft clunk.
Late again,
Came a gravel-thick voice. Oleg Kuznetsov stepped in, tugging a black glove over his left hand. His uniform bore the same red and black color scheme, though his jacket hung looser. Older issue, heavier plating. His eyes flicked up to the screen on the wall, already clocking the sweep parameters. Flores offered a slight grin without turning.
You get lost again, Dedushka?
Oleg grunted.
System tells me I near leak seal. I already checked yesterday. Twice.
Guess it wants a second opinion.
Or maybe it like waste my time.
He waved a hand vaguely.
Machine always thinks it's smarter.
Flores clipped the last fastener on his jacket and palmed the door panel. No alarms, no sirens, just a walk. Through spine 4B, past a valve that hadn't hissed when it should have, where silence still hadn't echoed back. The walk from Dome 2 to the main artery wasn't long, but it wasn't short either. Enough time to think, enough silence for thoughts to press in sideways. Flores didn't feel it. He moved at a steady pace, boots gliding more than stepping. A trained rhythm, the kind that blended into colony life without drawing attention. The halls were clean but worn, the seams between panels showing faint discoloration where sealants had been reapplied. No alarm, no urgency, but something felt unsettled. Beside him, Oleg exhaled through his nose. Not frustration, not nerves, just awareness. The breath of a man who'd walked into more than one quiet room and left it loud.
You smell that?
He muttered, not slowing. Flores didn't turn.
Filtered iron wash? Station grade mix?
Da. But too clean. Like someone tried to hide smell of shit.
They passed a maintenance kiosk, screen dark, flickering with the ghost of a diagnostic loop. Flores tapped it in passing. Nothing changed. Oleg gave it a glance.
See? Too clean.
Ahead, the corridor narrowed, funneling them toward the heavy blast door that sealed Dome 3's main access junction. The frame looked fine. The lock panel blinked yellow, standby. Not locked, not open. Waiting. Flores checked the pathing note on his wrist tablet.
Spine 4B access node. Should be clear. Routing flag soft seal failure. Nothing structural.
Soft seal break is how bad pressure breach starts.
Oleg said, voice low.
Like a crack in a faceplate. Not dangerous until after.
They reached the threshold. To their right, a junction alcove showed signs of recent welding. A quick patch, rough-edged, the kind of job done because someone had to, not because someone logged it. Overhead lights buzzed faintly, almost lost beneath the hum of recirc fans. Flores raised a hand and pressed his palm to the access scanner. No sound at first, then a slow hiss, not urgent, just deliberate. Metal shifted, locks disengaged, the seal retracted in quiet stages. Oleg tapped his chest twice. Superstition, not protocol.
Just in case,
He said softly. Flores didn't smile, but his eyes narrowed as he stepped through. The corridor beyond waited, half-lit, empty, and carrying the strange echo of a space that hadn't breathed right in hours. A deep shudder hit the corridor, subtle but wrong, like pressure shifting through bone. Jesus froze mid-step. His hand dropped to the wall, fingers splayed flat. Oleg stopped beside him, head tilted.
that normal?
Another low vibration. This one sharper, not seismic, local. Then crack, the unmistakable snap of compressed pressure releasing from somewhere it shouldn't. Flores lunged forward, keying the nearest maintenance panel.
It's a bleed. Thermal reg pressures. Off pattern.
The corridor lights flickered once, then again, holding steady but tinted faintly red.
Environmental stability compromised. Local seal status fluctuating. Alert status contained. Tier 2 visible only.
Oleg took a slow step back, unfastening the emergency sealant strap from his belt.
System still says minor?
Flores checked his wrist screen.
Classified as stable. Just flagged.
That's a lot of just.
A soft psst noise behind them. Both men turned. A secondary vent grill hung slightly ajar, not damaged, just open. Flores's mouth went dry. His hand hovered near the vent's edge.
Oleg, already on it.
He stepped forward, scanning the vent edges with a small inspection light. No footprints, no handprints, but the temperature here was colder than it should be. They didn't speak for a long moment. Then, bang! Metal struck metal. Not in the corridor, but inside the wall. Something moved fast, dragging weight. Jesus' ears rang, absence pressed beneath the lids of sound. Oleg pulled his stun bar from the back holster.
Still minor?
Flores just stared at the vent, then glanced down the hall and noticed it. The silence, not quiet, silence. Even the hum of the corridor airflow had stopped. That was wrong.
Oleg,
He said again. But this time, it wasn't a warning. It was a directive.
move.
They backed up toward the access door, stepping slow, controlled, no panic. But every step felt like it echoed too much. The corridor behind them remained empty, but it didn't feel empty. Flores keyed the exit seal. ReD. Jammed.
Override.
Oleg muttered, already pulling the backup code from his helmet's archive.
Hold your breath.
Pressure hissed down the walls. Temperature dropped another 2 degrees. Pressure stabilization. Fail local containment. Requesting manual lockout. The seal opened. Halfway. Just enough. They slipped through, pulling it shut manually behind them. Clang. Both leaned against the cold wall in the next chamber. Still alive, but not safe.
Whatever it is, it didn't trip any alarms.
Flores finally broke the silence. Oleg spat on the floor.
Then it's smart, or it's not a thing. Just something wrong in this system.
Jesus stared down the corridor they came from. The red lights stayed steady.
But wrongness doesn't leave vents open.
Oleg's voice was quiet now.
Then something opened it.
And so the anomaly lingered, unseen, unresolved, a breath held beneath the colony's skin, a whisper waiting to become a scream, much like the realization that I left my trousers in Dome 2's lavatory after lunch. If found, please return to Central Command. They are corduroy and I am cold. Stay tuned for the next episode of Dragon. Sorry about that. ReD VoiD!